Alright, let's do this one last time. My name is Dakota B. Parker. I was bitten by a radioactive spider, and for the last 7 years, I've run the YouTube channel Geekritique. And now, between editing videos and fighting crime, I've started a podcast. I thought I was the one and only podcaster in my universe, but it turns out I'm joined, as always, by...
Anthony, not B. Parker.
Yeah, my last name isn't Parker, and my middle name doesn't start with B, but you don't need to know that. Today we're talking Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, not the new film that's currently in theaters Across the Spider-Verse, although we'll probably touch on that a little bit.
Absolutely. We want it to be out a little bit longer, let y'all marinate within it before we actually start talking about it, full spoilers and whatnot.
For sure, yeah. It's too new for us to feel comfortable discussing it, like, you know, a full spoiler discussion. Anthony, we literally just got off recording our Guardians of the Galaxy episode, which you guys probably heard a week or two ago. Yeah, so we physically couldn't have done anything between recording these two podcasts, so we're gonna shift the way that we do this show. Instead of asking you what you've been up to, let's talk a little bit about some crazy stuff that we're into that, you know, is just kind of like breaking news, you know, at least, you know, relatively recently. I know you're a huge fan of Overwatch. I used to be a big fan of Overwatch. I'm still a fan of the world and the lore. Tell us a little bit about like what the issue is with Overwatch 2 and what Blizzard has promised versus what we are actually receiving.
Right. So the developers over in the Overwatch team, they announced recently that they've pulled the plug on the PvE stuff, the campaign stuff. I mean, that doesn't mean that we're not going to get maybe events and stuff, but that means that the long-awaited campaign stuff, they pulled the plug on it. And honestly, to tell you the truth, like, they came up with some narrative that it was supposed to lead up into some Overwatch MMO. I personally don't buy that. I think that was just a cop-out for them, like, oh, we couldn't do that because we wanted to do something even bigger. Dude, we didn't ask for that. We asked for, you know, they said that a campaign was coming out.
Story mode.
They even had, like, you know, they had gameplay for it, like, when they showed us in the trailer. So it's not like it was impossible.
Have they even had any, like, cinematics recently? I feel like they've been very low on, like, cinematic content since Overwatch 2 came out. Right.
You mean like when they came out with the Diva stuff and like those like Pixar quality cinematics? Yeah, it's been correct. Ages. To be honest, and I know a lot of people agree with me, I personally feel like, I mean, the game, it was a little bit on of a downfall before Jeff Kaplan, who was the director before, left, but he really kept it alive. When he decided to leave, that's when it started to kind of nosedive a little bit. Don't get me wrong, I still have fun with Overwatch. I still kind of enjoy it. But it was really big letdown. They promised their fans this. They had all this time pretending that they were working on this thing when I don't even know how much they worked on it, you know? So yeah, it really let down a lot of people, and I'm hoping that eventually they decide to reverse that decision, and you know, I would say just don't even announce it. Don't announce it. Just do it. Just be like, hey, look, we're sorry that we let you down. When it's ready to, you know, if they do decide to like make something big like that and they are ready to release it, just be like, hey, look, few months, this is coming out. Don't promise us something if you're not going to follow through on it. Just don't even talk about it if you're not 100% sure that it can work, you know?
You know what it feels like? It feels like they gave up on it.
I feel like they gave up on it a long time ago.
They gave up on it before Overwatch 2 came out.
Yeah.
Because the game was originally pitched as, you know, like an upgrade to the first Overwatch's formula plus a PvE, you know, or a story mode type gameplay setting. And obviously they didn't live up to that, and they decided to release the game free because it was basically just Overwatch with a couple new characters and a couple new maps. That's literally all that they changed.
Right. Yeah, so they like released the full game under the guise of, hey, we're just giving you the PvP stuff, but don't worry, next year we're gonna come out with that campaign stuff.
Were they planning on charging for the campaign stuff? Do you know?
I believe that there was gonna be a charge on that.
Okay, because I was thinking that like if they decided to just give this game away for free, then they lost.
Yeah,
money
no, they would charge.
Ultimately.
That would definitely be a charge. Yes, I agree, and people are actually coming to that realization. Like, you know what? I think that they really decided that they weren't going to do this a long time ago. That's why they released the PvP stuff, so that they can kind of bide their time before they really broke the news that this ain't coming out, you know? And so really what was going to drive this to be an Overwatch 2 was the inclusion of that campaign, because it was a continuation of the story and the lore from the first game. Really what we just got was an expansion, I would say, if that, like, not really, like maybe a bit of an UI change, some visual changes, but the game is kind of the same minus some maybe gameplay changes.
It does
Overwatch
feel
1.
like
5.
It feels like a 1.5. It's I almost get angry every time I see Overwatch 2 as a label, because like there wasn't really anything significantly different from the first game or the way that it plays that like changes the way that I think it should even be labeled. I don't know. I'm annoyed about the whole situation.
I agree, and you're not alone. And I'm gonna be, Blizzard definitely had its heyday, and they probably, had their issues before this happened. But I really do believe that what really just like tarnished it is the fact that they're like a part of Activision, and Activision is such a like money hungry thing now that they'll just do whatever to get money. I remember when Bungie used to be a part of the brand also. They came out with Destiny, and then they came out with Destiny 2. That wasn't Bungie's original vision for Destiny. They wanted just to come out with Destiny and then release the stuff like they're doing with Destiny 2. What they're doing with Destiny 2 is like they're releasing this expansion. They have their battle passes.
Yeah, a couple expansions now.
But that was their original design, how they wanted to do with Destiny. But no, Activision, after a while, they're like, no, we want a second game. That's very like on brand. So that's what Bungie kind of just separated, and they're like, nah, you know what, we're done. But at this point, I think that the DNA is so ingrained that there's no separation there. It's just one company. So, but just talk. We wanted to kind of talk a little bit on that. But that sucks.
We'll be back after a quick break.
I hate talking.
Do you love talking about any topic and are never frustrated during conversations? Then I Hate Talking is not a podcast for you.
But if there are topics that you avoid, then listen to I Hate Talking.
Do you know the definition of every word others use? I Hate Talking is not a podcast for you.
But if you are curious about the definition and historical usage of words, then listen to I Hate Talking.
Do you know about current events and other random topics? Then I Hate Talking is not a podcast for you.
But if you enjoy conversations on a variety of topics, then listen to I Hate Talking.
Listen to I Hate Talking wherever you get your podcasts.
Episodes drop every Thursday. Listen, like, and follow I Hate Talking today.
Anyway, on a lighter note, we're going to talk a little bit about your experiences at New York Comic-Con several years ago now. You had the unique privilege to see, was it the entirety of Into the Spider-Verse? First 20 minutes of Into the Spider-Verse, a couple months before it was like in theaters, if I remember correctly.
So, Into the Spider-Verse, it came out January of 2019, if I can look it correctly.
Up. Let's do the quick Google. Into the Spider-Verse. My phone is saying May 3rd, 2002. I think it's thinking that I'm talking about the original Spider-Man. It's December. It's December of 2018.
Okay. So
New York Comic-Con is 2 months prior to that. So you got to see it 2 months
correct.
earlier.
So it was earlier in October. I remember at that point, it was in Madison Square Garden that they showed this. I think we had all gone. It was you, Jen, and I, we had gone there for a panel, and then there was some other stuff that was happening. I think that was the moment that you went off to do something, Jen went to go do something, and I stayed there for the Into the Spider-Verse panel. And it was really, really cool because they had the director that was there, and Shamik Moore was there, and Jake Johnson was there. I don't think that, Haley was not there, and Nicolas Cage wasn't there. Those were pretty much like a couple of the main characters in Into the Spider-Verse were there, and so we saw the first 20 minutes of Into the Spider-Verse, and it was really interesting because we were watching something that was in progress. There were still scenes that they hadn't even completely animated yet. Like it was like block figures that, not block figures, but like gray figures that it was very like rudimentary animation, and they were showing this stuff. Like there was moments where it was like full animation, what you saw in the movie, and then like I just put in a few hours of animating and maybe Maya. It was so cool experiencing that, and I knew in that moment that I was like, man, this is going to be like a really good movie. It just started off strong. Yeah, I was really happy to be able to get the coverage of that.
Yeah, that was a cool experience that you had. And I gotta touch on that. Like when it comes to movies, those last few months before a movie's released, if you don't have like everything finalized by relatively early on, that's got to be so stressful for the creators. Like, will all these people have their products finished by the end so that we can release the movie when we're supposed to release the movie? Because there's no way to at that point, like you can't really push off the film once tickets are being sold online and stuff. Yeah, it's just kind of crazy. It's interesting, I didn't even see Into the Spider-Verse in theaters.
Oh, really?
Like, for whatever reason, this movie kind of missed me by, and I heard that it was good, but I just, for whatever reason, I hadn't even seen the trailers. Like, it didn't do anything for me. I had seen a couple clips.
So I knew it existed prior to New York Comic Con, but I hadn't seen much on it. But then when I went to that panel, I was like, wow, this actually looks really, really cool. The whole idea of it kind of looking like a comic book. And so I decided to go see it in theaters. I saw it, I think, within the first couple of weeks. Instantly loved it. The character of Miles is absolutely charming. It was like really just amazing to revisit this film for this episode. Seeing that first 20 minutes and how it was and then what it became just really blew my mind. I had to see the final product, I invested the first 20 minutes of the film. I was like, man, I gotta finish this.
Yeah, interesting. I finally did get to see the movie as soon as it went on demand, and I was able to, appreciate it in all its glory. I wish I would have had that theater experience like you, but I'm happy that I have any experience at all with this because it's so good, and I'm so amazed about like what they were able to do, not only with this film but like the sequel, Across the Spider-Verse. Like, after seeing Across the Spider-Verse twice and going back to check this movie out again, which I haven't seen in a couple years at this point, everything clicks, everything fits. There are like callbacks in the new movie that perfectly line up with everything that they lined up before, and there's even some Easter eggs in this movie that we can't really talk about, unfortunately, that detail like what like the big twists are in Across the Spider-Verse if you like pay attention close enough.
Right. Something that I noticed in this one, maybe I only seen Across the Spider-Verse once. I do want to go see it again, but Gwen shows up before the Collider incident.
Yes.
What? So how was that?
What? Oh, they do explain it in this movie. Not Across the Spider-Verse. They explain it in Into the Spider-Verse. She, for whatever reason, she was sent into last week.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't. That line passed by me for some reason. Yes, you're right. She did. Okay, yeah, that explains it. You are correct.
No, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Yeah, because I was thinking that too. Like, wait, why is she here? Why is she not glitching? Why is she like different than the rest? And then she started glitching later in the film, and everything made sense once she like kind of explained that, like, you know, she was thrown here a week ago, strangely.
Correct. Yeah, you're right.
But she isn't the only one who is thrown into Miles's universe. We got a couple.
Your namesake, Pete.
Yeah, we got some other Peters. We got, you know, the Spider-Man Noir. We got Penny Parker, who's kind of like a
a manga anime version of a Spider
who drives a mech.
Spider Woman.
Who knows?
Spider Diva.
Kind of diva-esque, even though she's Japanese. There's Peter Porker. There's Peter B. Parker. There's... Am I missing any? Obviously Gwen. I think
Gwen,
that's it,
and then
right?
Miles.
Yeah, that's Miles, of course. Yeah.
And dude, Spider Noir, so funny. Nicolas Cage.
I didn't realize that was Nicolas Cage until I watched it.
And then when you realize that it's him, or like you find out that it's him, you hear his voice.
Mm-hmm. How did you stream this or like rewatch this?
Amazon Prime. I bought it.
Yeah, I decided to rent it off Amazon Prime.
It was like $10 with the bonus content. So I was just like, I got it, and I watched some of the bonus content. It was pretty cool. I really do like the voice actor for Miles, Shamik Moore. Like, he just seems like an absolute just like charming individual, and like it really like shows through into Miles also, because Miles is an absolutely just like charming character that you want to get behind and like root for, because, you know, all these like characters around him, they know, you know, they've lived the Spider-Man, Spider-Woman experience. For him, it's different. You know, he's got different powers, and it's really cool. This movie actually inspired me to read the Spider-Verse event. Absolutely. Really? So it's different. The Spider-Verse, I don't think it's called Into the Spider-Verse. I think it's just called Spider-Verse.
I think it's just Spider-Verse, yeah.
So it's different. The Spider-Verse event in the comics is pretty much the Spider people. They're trying to like save and like fight against this family called the Inheritors. That they're like pretty much their life is to hunt down individuals that they're like human, and like it's like human and animals, that their DNA are kind of like mixed. They like feed off of them.
Interesting.
And so Spider-Man, Spider-Woman, you know, Spider people, they have a whole bunch of... That's a good source of you know to feed off of. So yeah, they tracking down all of them, and yeah, they're like getting together and fighting. It's really interesting because there's a Spider-Man that exists, that it's Otto Octavius, that took over the body of Peter Parker, and that Peter Parker died. So then he took on the role of Spider-Man, and he's called the Superior Spider-Man. And he's like very like his personality is very Otto Octavius, but he kind of kicks into Spider-Man mode when the time counts. But he's very like, you can tell it's him. He's like calculated and very like methodical, and not like as bantery as Peter Parker is.
That's really cool, and actually that's a crossover event that I have not read, but I want to get into.
I want to read the second part, or the second event that they had, that called Spider-Geddon. I haven't read that yet.
Okay, cool. Let's talk a lot about the movie, because there's a lot to discuss. You mentioned that, you know, Shamik Moore's Miles Morales is such a charming character, and you're right. You root for this kid because in a way, he's the everyman, kind of like Peter Parker is the everyman, and everyone can find something to some aspect of his life mirrors our youth, you know, whether it's, you know, the way that his parents treat him, or the way that nobody understands him, or the way that he's just trying to do his best and nothing's working out. That's part of the Spider-Man story, and, you know, we learn a lot about that when it comes to like canon events as per the second movie, which, you know, we won't get any more into them with that. It is really just like a beautiful thought that like all Spider-Men, no matter what universe, all have to go through hard times to, you know, be the person that they have to be. And I think that's what makes Spider-Man such a compelling character. He's basically Marvel's Superman, you know, not necessarily on like a power level, but like in terms of a humanity and like a struggle level. I feel like he's very much Marvel's Superman.
Yeah, just with you talking about how every Spider-Man has that like catalyst moment, which is like, you know, with Ben Parker dying, and with Gwen it was her friends, you know, Miles, he has his moment with his uncle, who he actually finds out his uncle is a villain, the Prowler.
Yes, that was tough. Yeah. That was tough for both of those characters.
Yes.
The moment where they both unmasked, and, you know, he's dangling Miles by the throat off of a building, and you just see the fight go out of him. You know, Miles obviously isn't going to fight his uncle in that moment. He physically can't. I feel bad for the uncle, even though he's gone down such a dark path. You know, he's a clear villain who's willing to kill some random innocent. But Miles is family. Miles is someone that he has always... He even mentions later on that, like, I wanted you to look up to me, and he failed him. And it's touching.
Right. And he has like a last breath moment, kind of like Ben Parker has with, like, you know, just like kind of be better, you know, you know, be good.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And so that's definitely that catalyst moment for Miles Morales. And not to go like really into spoilers, but they really do double down on these moments in the second film.
Yeah, what if we can talk a little bit about just at least the themes of the second film. I feel like they took the basic... I mean, it's not a basic formula at all. Like, Spider-Verse is not a basic film by any stretch of the imagination, but they took all of these themes and they stretched them out, and they pulled them in ways you might not be expecting when you're watching Across the Spider-Verse. And one thing that I noticed when I went back to this film is that it almost feels as though the animation is a little more muted in Into the Spider-Verse versus the, you know, like Across the Spider-Verse was super highly artistic, and almost every frame was like a beautiful painting.
Artistic, and reflected the moment that was happening.
Ooh, man, it was so good. And I feel like Across the Spider-Verse, you know, obviously had a lot more time to figure out how to get those moments across in ways that were unique to that film. But as this movie, Into the Spider-Verse, goes, it felt like it changed how we look at animation. It was able to give that comic book feel to an animated film, and it had the energy, it had like the color grain, it had
it did, and the pop-ups, the like word bubbles.
Pop-ups. Yeah, that's so fun, especially in the beginning of the movie when he first starts getting his powers. Like, you know, the voices in his head, and that's a very like Spider-Man thing, is to like monologue as he's saying
seriously. And I love that when he's getting his powers, Miles like pulls up a Spider-Man comic to like figure out what to do. He's like, man, what is going on? Okay, let me see what he does. It's so funny.
Yeah,
and it's
clever. That was clever.
And it's crazy because I think that was the first Spider-Man comic, right? Amazing Fantasy 15, am I?
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct. It's just really cool. And it's interesting because, like, in that universe, Peter Parker has only been Spider-Man 10 years up to that point. So those comics were relatively recent. They weren't like old comics.
Oh, yeah,
but
you're right.
Actually, let's talk a little bit. like, because that in our real world that was like from the 60s,
right, but like you're correct, because and I think he became Spider-Man at like 16, and in the movie he was 26 when the Miles universe Spider-Man or Peter Parker died.
Let me tell you, like, I got emotional when Peter died. You know, I've seen this movie a couple times already, but like going back to this,
it was a really cool revisit after seeing the sequel.
Yeah, and what I was trying to say was this movie came out right after Stan Lee died. It was the first movie to have a cameo of Stan Lee after his death. And it's a really just simple and nice cameo. Like anyone can wear the mask, you know, like it'll fit eventually. It's both funny and also it fits, you know, the Spider-Man, you know, mythos. But it's been several years since we've had a Stan Lee cameo at this point. It's tough to say because obviously he passed away, you know, back in 2018. And, you know, going back to this movie to, you know, rewatch that scene of, you know, Spider-Man dying or Peter Parker dying early on, and then seeing Stan Lee, I was just, I got teary-eyed. I was just like, oh man, I miss this guy, you know?
No, you're right. No, I agree. They did, just the passing of the mantle from Peter to Miles they did a really good job in this film. You know, every Peter needs to go through that growth, or every Spider-Man or Spider-Woman or Spider-Person has to go through that growth period, and I feel like they did it successfully, but it didn't feel like this story has been told over a mundane way. They did it with like a fresh look to it, you know?
What you mentioned was interesting. Like there was a nice passing of the torch. There was the promise early on that like when the Peter Parker of Miles' universe first met Miles, there was a promise of, I'll show you the ropes. And he never got to do that.
Oh yes, absolutely.
And while, you know, the other spider people that show up after the collider starts, you know, do help him in his fight, all the major events that happened to all the Spider-Men happened to Miles basically when he was alone on his own. You know, like he learned how to he learned how to, you know, finally fine-tune his powers when he was by himself. You know, when he had a moment of clarity. He had that moment where his uncle, the Prowler, died and gave him like his own version of the Ben Parker speech.
Right.
Alone. You know, none of the other spider people were around him at that point. And it's interesting, like, while they were present in that universe at the time, he still had to go through all of that alone, just like they did.
Right. Like, it's essential to any Spider-Man story, you know? Like, they all go through that. I believe what made it all the more different was that he had people that understood. Like... Look, you know, I'm sorry, you know, I understand this is what happened, you know? And I guess like just them all being able to understand and really just reach out, like it was like a really good thing for him, but he still had to find that inner strength like on his own. Like he had to, they can show him the ropes, they can show him this, they can show him that. But at the end of the day, just like every single one of them, they have to find it within themselves, you know? So, and, you know, he ends up doing it, you know? And I kind of want to talk a little bit about some of Miles's powers. Dude, he has some like really crazy but like amazing powers.
Yeah, he's pretty OP.
And I really like that he has that camouflage ability, because it really makes sense, because there's some spider species that have that ability to camouflage. I mean, in his version, it's like going invisible, but still, it makes sense in the sense of a spider. And he has that like electroshock ability, which is really cool, also.
Yeah, the spider that bit him, when it had that little montage in the beginning where, like, you know, he's doing his like spray paint on the like in the subways. And the spider's like coming over to him. It was blending in. It was camouflaging to whatever surface it was touching. So there's clear evidence that what he that ability that he received was specifically from that spider. And he also had that, you mentioned it, the electrocution ability. I think Peter B. Parker calls it like the venom sting or something like that, which is pretty cool. And he uses it to great effect in Across the Spider-Verse as well.
He does. I really like that dynamic that Miles and Peter have, Peter B. Parker, that he has that. I mean, it's mentor and student, but it's not just Peter imparting stuff to Miles. Miles does a lot for Peter also. He revitalizes him. That Peter,
he gives him a reason to live.
Right. He really was like, he had lost his reason to be Spider-Man. He was, this, he kind of let himself go. This is, an older Spider-Man that's in I would say late 30s, maybe early 40s, that kind of Spider-Man. And Miles coming into his life really just does a lot for him, and it continues on into this next film in a really big way. But it's really cool. I like when I see that dynamic where there's a teacher and a student, but the teacher doesn't close themselves off from receiving from the student or learning from the student, or being inspired by the student.
Yeah, I love what you're saying there, because he does come off as very nihilistic at first.
Right.
Like you said, he's down on his luck. He's no longer with Mary Jane. In his universe, they divorced,
and he just wants to go back home. He's like, dude, let's go turn on that collider so I can go home.
Yeah, and later he resigns himself to the fact that he'll be the one to close the collider and eventually die in this universe, basically suggesting that he doesn't, the other universe doesn't need him anymore. He's okay with himself dying. But when Miles eventually does save them, and he gives them, he pushes Peter into that collider, he has a moment where he kind of realizes oh yeah, you got this. And he also even earlier in the film, he says that I don't want kids, I never wanted kids. And then after Miles basically finds his feet, he kind of inspires Peter B. Parker to go back, find Mary Jane, potentially have a child.
Right. And he does say, he's like, I kind of want to have kids, and I hope that they're like you,
Exactly, yeah. There's so many I call them callbacks, but they're teases for the
right that
film,
they call back
the trilogy.
That it's called back from this film, and you see it so much more now that you went back and watched this film, how much they set up for Across the Spider-Verse. And it's such a good movie, and there's really a really good lesson to be learned from this also. Something that a lot, pretty much anybody can take away,
I think the lesson that I would take away is that don't let anyone tell you what you can't be.
Right.
Or don't let anyone tell you that you can't live up to a certain standard that you set for yourself, because Miles, he's not Peter Parker. He wasn't meant to be the Spider-Man of this universe, but he puts on the mask. He, kind of does what Stanley says, and eventually he fits the suit, and he finally finds his own way of, being Spider-Man and balancing his, day life.
Right, and I like that, even though, sure, he's taken on the mantle of Spider-Man, he's not trying to be Peter Parker. He wants
Correct.
to be he being Miles Morales. That's who he is. That's who he can be. That's the best that he can be, is Miles Morales, And
yeah,
I'm glad that because that's what initially he's trying to be like, I'm Spider-Man, so I have to be like this. But no, he has his own way of going about it. He's yeah, sure, Spider-Man, but at the end of the day, he's Miles Morales, not Peter Parker. That's actually, and I know side note for everybody, but that game, the Miles Morales Spider-Man one, is really good too. That Spider-Man, the first one was really good, but the Miles Morales one is awesome also. Like they continue with the awesomeness from the first game.
Is it Insomniac as well?
Yes, I'm pretty sure it is, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
Okay, because I think Spider-Man 2 is on its way, right?
Yes, and it looks so good. We're getting Venom's suit Spider-Man.
That's actually really exciting. Cool. Let's talk about some villains in this, because we got a couple.
We did. The main one being Kingpin.
I love the way that they animated him. He's just a hulking suit.
He is ginormous, and his head is like in the middle of his body.
That's how big his shoulders are.
He's so massive.
I love the way that they animated him. It's so ridiculous.
Right, and Liev Schreiber voices him.
Yeah, Sabretooth.
Yeah, Sabretooth.
They do such a good job with Kingpin. It's such a stylistic choice to make him, because ultimately that's pretty much what Kingpin is. He's just a big bully in a massive suit. That's what they portrayed in this. I like the idea that he was trying to use the Collider to get his family back. Instead of just finding his family in the real world, he was just like, I'm going to take a family from another.
I know, seriously, right? He's like, I lost my family here, so I'm going to take this one from this universe. And so we get him, and then we get Dr. Octopus, but, with some, with a different flair.
Yeah, Dr. Olivia Octavius, I think?
Yes.
Olivia. Yeah, and she goes by Liv.
Right.
But her enemies call her Doc Ock.
Right.
I think it's really
And
cool.
her arms are like really it's crazy because it's like tubes. It's tubing. Instead of like metal arms, it's tubes.
Yeah, it's cool. It's like pneumatic tubes. They're full of air.
Right.
I found the creativity of this movie just incredible with every character. We barely even touched on the early Spider-Man. I actually find that they did the Spider People better in Across the Spider-Verse than they did in this movie. Besides, Gwen being a big character and Peter B. Parker, I think the side Spider People in this movie didn't really get a lot of time to shine.
Right.
Besides having one-off funny jokes.
Right.
But speaking of one-off funny jokes that I find is absolutely hilarious, Miles is trying to steal the computer from Dr. Octopus, and Peter's basically just fighting her off like, I got this, and then he catches up to Miles. He's like, good news, we don't need the monitor. And he throws the monitor back. It's just it's funny because it's basic computer knowledge. You don't need the monitor if you have the computer. It's just the screen. Anyway,
backtracking back to the villains, we also get Hammerhead and a really interesting version of Scorpion.
Yeah, I forgot about these guys. Yeah, they do pop up, as well as the Prowler. So was it just 5 that we had? Yeah, so we had Kingpin, Doc Ock, Scorpion, Hammerhead,
Prowler,
and Prowler. Yeah, so I guess that's it. Sinister 5.
And then like you said, we talked about Penny Parker a little bit, which she's in the way future of New York. Spider Noir, who's in the past. We also have Peter Porker.
He had a great line where they're all hiding from Miles' roommate on the roof. Yes. He's just like, do animals talk in this universe? I don't want to scare him. And he just collapses.
Is absolutely hilarious. And then it was those 3, Gwen and Peter B. Parker.
Yeah, I like how Spider-Man Noir was so fascinated by the Rubik's Cube that he couldn't even differentiate colors on.
Oh my gosh, yeah, seriously, he's messing around that a Rubik's Cube, and he's like, is this purple? They're like, nope. Dude, I loved one of my favorite moments was when they first meet in the basement. They introduce themselves. And Spider Noir like shows himself, and Peter B. Parker is like, is he in black and white, and where's that wind coming from? And he's just like, the wind follows me wherever I go, or something like that. Dude, it was so funny. See, it's so like clever. Moments like that like I love going back to like cartoons to watch because of the absolute ridiculousness of it, but they'll give you those one-liners that just take you out.
And they were able to do so much with the animation. I want to talk briefly about the final fight before we wrap this up. I thought it was really interesting, like how they chose, like once the collider started going and like the dimensions started folding in on each other,
right?
You lost a sense of spatial awareness. Like everything was everywhere. There was no up, there was no down, there was no left, there was no right. Stuff was flying any which way, and people, these characters were basically working solely off of their spider senses. Like they were able to determine like what was happening and where to go because of their abilities as spider people.
Right.
And I think that was such a cool stylistic way, because it got crazy.
It really did.
Crazy. Like
just so many universes were just like collapsing in on themselves.
And not to mention, like, each spider person has a different art style in this, that they had to basically, accommodate to fit with, the colliding universes. I just think it was such a creative film altogether. But I love the fact that, that was how they chose to show more than 3 dimensions, was by like removing our spatial awareness and them having to fight it out. And Kingpin is super strong in this.
Kingpin is, and you see it especially in like that Spider-Man game. Like Kingpin he's a lot stronger than like people give him credit for. I mean, he was pretty strong. True. They made him a lot stronger in that Hawkeye show. That's a good point. Beast.
Yeah, he like punched someone across the room. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, like Kingpin has this like superhuman strength that I feel like he puts his weight behind.
Yeah, it's a weird thing to describe, because I don't think anyone would call what he has like a superpower per se.
Right.
Like, he doesn't have a designated super strength, but he's just ultra strong
and can like lift stuff and like toss it. But I feel like that's all his and not a power. Yeah, it's absolutely insane. Like, I would say, like, I think that's like scary that somebody's that strong without a superpower. Imagine if he had super strength on top of the strength that he has. Like, dude, that man would be lifting up like cities. He'd be like insane.
Let's talk a little bit about Miles' parents, because we haven't really
we didn't.
We haven't mentioned them yet. And I feel like they're such a huge and integral part to Miles's character, because they clearly love him so much, and he's kind of like fighting their wishes in this movie. He's trying to find a place for himself, and on top of that, he's becoming Spider-Man, and it's a lot for any young person to grow up. When you're in like the middle school, high school era, even college to some degree, you don't know who you're going to be. And I think that's really just amazingly captured in this movie, of like just trying to figure out who Miles is, and his parents trying to do what's best for him, but it isn't always like what he thinks is in his best interest.
The teenage experience is already like tough by itself. You're in that crazy process of moving on from being a child to adulthood. Yeah, it's confusing, but then like having this whole other thing thrust upon you, and it's not just like, something as simple as like having a part-time job, or, having to take care of, there's those teenagers that have to take care of their family after school. You have these powers, you have this like now like responsibility to like be a superhero for the city, but you're still a kid, you're still young, you're still in that transition period, and he hadn't even like hit puberty yet, like it's funny when he was getting these powers, like, man, is this puberty?
Yeah. I think he did, because later I think he has already hit puberty, because he's 15 by this point.
Right.
And
well, was he?
And he tells.
So he may have just started or is about to hit there.
Yeah, I don't know. I think when he's talking to Gwanda, he says, "Oh, it's just puberty. Never mind, it's not puberty. That happened a long time ago," or something like that.
Well, I think he was. I think that was him just showing out to make him seem like a man. Like, oh no, I've already gone through puberty. Yeah, man, and that's why he like lowered his voice to make him sound like he was older.
Hey.
Yeah, well, dude, I absolutely love. And then his fingers getting stuck in her hair. I love, like, it seems like every Spider-Man has just like that issue with sticking. It's so funny, like, you know, you get that in was it like the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man where he like sticks to stuff and he can't like let go.
That's cool.
Yeah, so he has that moment in this. It's this movie, just from the art style choices to the story and just everything that was involved, the casting, it just really set itself up for an amazing sequel.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to leave this discussion off on.
Absolutely, and I can't wait to continue this with the sequel. Thank you for listening to our 58th episode of Project Geekology. We had a great time revisiting Into the Spider-Verse, and if you really enjoy our show, give us a 5-star review on your preferred podcast application. And if you want to join us and continue the conversation, follow us at PGeekology on Twitter and Project Geekology on Instagram. We announce our releases and we update you all with our upcoming episodes and whatever it is that we're planning or scheduling. And so just follow us there, and thank you all, and can't wait to get out the next episode.
Yeah, see you guys next time. Have a good one.
Bye.